Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Mad Army Podcast. We are here to talk about NXT Takeover Cardiff before we get to the Royal Rumble. It's episode 44, season 7. A lot of stuff happened on the show. Alright, so Johnny Rivers fought Tyson Cage to kick off. It was a decent little match to warm up the audience. That's what I was going for ultimately. Tyson Cage picked up the win over Johnny Rivers. Ultimately, I felt the Cage needed to get some momentum going. Johnny could take the loss. It worked as a simple little match that I worked up to, give a good kickoff to the show. Simple as that, quick and easy. Going to matchup number 2, it was the Cruiserweight Championship. Finn Balor, the champion, defends against Lio Rush, Oni Lorcan, and Haruto Yamashita. I originally was thinking Haruto would win it back, or win the title again for the second time in his career, but I decided not to do that. I thought that Finn Balor, because I just had the titles jump from Tyler Bate to Mustafa Ali, then to Finn Balor, I thought, you know what, how about I keep it on Balor a little bit longer and try to turn this into a little reign for him. So I had him retain. And I wanted to involve Oni Lorcan, Lio Rush, and Haruto. Still wanted to make all three of them look good. It was a decent match again. I think, looking at TakeOver, it's overall a fairly decent card. All the matches were decent. I don't think any of them were bad. They were all just alright. They weren't outstanding, 5-star, or anything like that, but it was just a decent show. And that only makes it more challenging in the future for the final pay-per-view of NXT history to try to deliver with a great card. So that burden falls upon me. But going to the NXT Women's Championship, Maria fights Ronda Rousey in the rematch. Originally, this was supposed to be the first time they crossed paths one-on-one. Ultimately, didn't go down that way. I had Maria fight Ronda one-on-one last pay-per-view. And now we're here. Maria really had to take the fight to her. In a singles match, Ronda basically didn't want Maria to play in her strong suits of weapons, so Maria had to try to outmaneuver her. It was a pretty decent match as well. Once again, nothing was bad, nothing was great. But Maria retained and poured on her reign, so now it leaves the question of who will step up to her next. She attacked Ronda Rousey afterwards. Then it almost feels like, what next? Who's next in the list of people to take her on? So matchup number 4 was Bruce Bennett versus Ace. Alright, so basically I wanted to do some of the Ace here, and I wanted to do some of Bruce Bennett, so Bruce Bennett had a little bit of heel heat. This calls back to when Bruce Bennett broke up the faction of the Golden Sins last season when they lost the tag team titles. He attacked Ace, went to SmackDown, Sante went to Raw, Alex Carter and Ace stayed down in NXT. At least temporarily before Alex Carter went to the main roster on Monday Night Raw. But Bruce Bennett basically has a problem with Ace because Ace has been reaching some success and Ace has a future NXT title shot. So Bruce Bennett gets involved, wants to put a stop to him, be the evil villain, and ultimately Ace did pick up the win in a 2 out of 3 falls match, which is pretty good as well. It's a fun little match, and Ace can now move forward and possibly set his sights on the NXT Championship. We'll have to see. Alright, matchup number 5. To end this trilogy of the tag team title match, Cole Quinn and Christian defending against the Dynasty and that's EC3 and Austin Arrogance. I decided to elevate the stakes here and make it a TLC match. They've been trading titles on the past 2 pay-per-views, so I decided that this was going to be the end-all be-all between the 2 teams, at least for now, to conclude the trilogy. EC3, who was newly crowned the NXT champion last show, coming in with momentum, as well as Austin Arrogance, coming in with momentum by beating AJ on SmackDown for their faction. And ultimately, the Dynasty secured the NXT Tag Team titles to become 2-time champions. And I wanted to do something different because the first one was just a basic 2v2 match, and then the second match was an elimination tag team match, which was really good, by the way. I don't think they had a terrible match out of the trilogy, but I think the first one was the worst. I think the second one was the best, and this was just in between. It wasn't great, and it wasn't bad. It was just good. But ultimately, that puts a pin in their rivalry. For now, we'll have to see what happens at NXT Takeover, the final one, because the Dynasty are carrying the titles, and Cole Quinn and Christian are still in the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Tournament. So Jack McKay and Jacob Knox. Oh boy, 2 out of 3 falls, Extreme Rules. So ultimately, Jack McKay comes in with an undefeated streak. Jacob Knox looks to come in for revenge, because for anybody that remembers, 46 episodes ago, something like that, Jacob Knox lost to Jack McKay for the first time ever by anybody by stoppage. So that was huge, and he was out of action for half a season. He comes back and is completely obsessed with trying to take it to Jack McKay. Simple as that. He wants revenge on Jack McKay. So they basically set up this match, and they're going to end the feud here, and Jack McKay sweeps him 2-0. But what I will say, the difference here is that it seemed like Jacob Knox still put up a fight. He still put up resiliency, but he looked stronger out of it. He looked like a stronger competitor in both fights with Jack McKay, and we'll have to see how Jacob Knox moves forward with this defeat once again to Jack McKay. But ultimately, I win with Jack McKay. He preserves his undefeated streak, and then after the match, Jack McKay gets attacked by Brock Lesnar. Can't talk more on that, but you can make a few assumptions based on if you know anything about what's going on with Jack McKay lately. So yeah, Brock Lesnar attacks Jack McKay. We'll have to see where that goes as well. Alright, so the NXT North American Championship, the semi-main event of the show. It was touted to be Chris Hall defending against the GM, Mr. Samuel. That clearly didn't happen. Mr. Samuel basically pulled the wool over Chris Hall's eyes to make it think that he was going to fight Chris Hall and come out of retirement for the match. Instead, he tried to mess with Chris Hall's mind to make him feel, or to put him in a different mental state in terms of like who you're prepping for, what you're thinking about, and then bam, Mr. Samuel lets him know, by the way, you're not fighting me, you're fighting somebody else. And it turns out to be the returning Ryan Trapp, who Chris Hall, of course, before Survivor Series, put through a car window and then cut his hair. Ryan Trapp shows off his new hairstyle and managed to defeat Chris Hall to become the North American champion, ending the reign of 18 episodes for Chris Hall. After that, Chris Hall goes backstage and then gets attacked by Mac Allen, his former partner, who he betrayed earlier this season. So it seems that Mac Allen is making a big return now, officially. So, 2 things here. Why I went with Ryan Trapp instead of Mac Allen. One, first off, I wanted to save Mac Allen versus Chris Hall for the final show. I feel like that's one of the more hyped up matches for the people that watch NXT, which is very few, but nonetheless. And for Ryan, so I basically wanted to create 2 interesting matches. You get the title off Chris, and Chris and Mac can fight for a feud match. Meanwhile, Ryan Trapp can get the title and face different competitors, maybe even a multi-man match for the North American Championship. So you possibly, instead of just one match or surrounding the title, you create 2 matches, one with a big feud, the other with a new champion. So that was the idea that went into that decision, going with Chris Hall, losing the title to Ryan Trapp. I had Ryan stepping in since before maybe Backlash, roughly, when I had the decision for Ryan Trapp to come back around here, get his hair cut, all the in-betweens, but ultimately this actually was the show where Mac Allen was supposed to officially return, or make his first appearance back, but I ultimately had him appear the last Takeover as well, but only for that little stunt. But it seems that Mac Allen is back full time. Alright, going on to the main event. EC3 versus Luke Harper versus Jackson Wolf. So this was an interesting one. This was an audible I called last minute. Actually right before the NXT show. The day before, on episode 43. It was like right after episode 43 I decided that, so during that week, or last week, I decided that EC3 was going to beat Luke Harper to become North American or NXT champion, to really do several things. A, surprise people, and throw a wrench in the, Luke Harper versus Jackson Wolf. Jackson Wolf's probably going to win it back. So EC3 became the wild card champion. And not only that, I decided, you know what, he's not going to just win it on NXT, he's going to retain it at TakeOver. But I'm going to make people think that Jackson might win this back, because now there's 3 people, you don't know who's getting the pin. Jackson still got a pin in that match, so he can still possibly be a contender for the championship, as well as EC3 retains, making the dynasty look strong, with 4 championships in their corner. As of TakeOver, we won't get into the Rumble just yet. So, this is all done last minute, and I completely changed my plans. The original plan was for Jackson Wolf to take back the title from Luke Harper at TakeOver, and then proceed toward the final TakeOver. As you can clearly see, I didn't go down the way. I went for the powerhouse of the Dynasty faction, EC3. So this was really the Dynasty's resurgence to dominance. So yeah, that's what I went with. Pretty straightforward and simple, I think, but still a ton of fun. Like, nothing was a standout phenomenal match, but nothing was bad either. I think it was a relatively good card. It was a lot of fun, and I'm really hoping that I can write some exciting stuff building up toward the final TakeOver. Things to look forward to: Ryan Trapp, the new champion; EC3, how the heck is that all going to be determined? Still got the North American, or the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic, excuse me. You got Chris Hall and Mac Allen to look forward to. Maybe Brock Lesnar versus Jack McKay. So several feuds. Ace possibly is going to try to gun for the NXT Championship. Maria, the NXT Women's Champion, is to find a new contender for her title. And what's going to happen with Tyson Cage, Johnny Rivers, and a few others. And Jacob Knox. So, there's a few predictable matches that you can figure out. One, specifically, Chris Hall versus Mac Allen is most likely going to happen, but everything else is kind of up in the air. What's going to happen? Who knows? We'll have to see. But nonetheless, that does it for NXT TakeOver. I know this is relatively brief, but it was pretty straightforward. It was a shame nobody could be there live, because it was fun. You know, I always wish people were live, mainly because it just helps me overall. But whatever. Nonetheless, hope you all enjoyed the video. I hope this was enlightening. If I missed anything or you guys have any more questions, feel free to hit the comments below and let me know. But other than that, thank you all for listening. And as always, suit up, Matt Army. I'll see you next time.